Welcome back to another comparison between a cheapie and a high-end. Hello, welcome back to Seldomly Off, and I'm Daniel. Today we're talking fragrances, and this is a first impression comparison between Lalique Encre Noire and Masque Milano Hemingway. In this video series, I compare and give my first impressions on two fragrances, usually in sample form, that I chose to cover a specific topic. This is not a fragrance battle. We're not here to decide which of the two fragrances is better. This is about opening the conversation and talking about the wear experience. The fragrances that I chose today are meant to cover the topic of heavy vetiver scents. I chose these two because I really like the experience of the experiment between the cheap and the expensive version. Last time it was Versace Home versus the Clive Christian Crab Apple Blossom. Today, I think that these two will be a lot more comparable. We have an all-star from the cheapie line, which is the Lalique Encre Noire, very famous for being affordable and high quality. And on the other side, we have a little bit more of a bougie niche version of a vetiver scent. This one here is Masque Milano Hemingway. My curiosity in this comparison was all about how these two narrate the vetiver, how they represent that note, and how they fare one against the other given the massive price difference. The price difference between the two is about almost a tenfold difference. The Lalique is easy to find in the 25 to 30 bucks range. This is the Eau de Toilette. Well, the Masque Milano, if we want to compare 100 ml for 100 ml, this hovers over the $250 for 100 ml. This is a travel size that I've been sitting on for a while. I have sniffed this a while back at the atomizer when I was doing the Sultan Vetiver from Nichanet review. I just wanted to know if they were comparable or not. They're actually quite different. In general, I'm not a huge fan of vetiver, especially this kind of vetiver from both of them. I'm expecting it to be very dry, very earthy, and very ashy. My preference is usually towards a much wetter, richer version of vetiver, like the Sultan Vetiver. That scent is very dense, it's very green, it's very herbaceous. There were a lot of supporting notes to help just tone down the overall bitterness and the ashiness that vetiver can give you. I have smelled Encre Noire in the past. That was a while back, and I was not impressed. This was definitely not a fragrance that appealed to me at the time. I really never even understood why it was so popular. Ultimately, I just blamed it all on the price, but this never clicked for me in the past, and today we're here to find out if my taste has changed. It has been a really long time since I smelled it, and I'm actually curious. Before we start, let me just remind you how this works. I'll be spraying these two fragrances directly on skin, left and right arm. I'll be talking about the initial impressions that I get upon the spray, maybe something about the house, my experiences with the house. Then I'll come back after a certain period of time, talk about the dry down, give my expectations of longevity, maybe value for money, compare the vetiver take on these two specifically, and then give my overall conclusions. At this point, I think that we should just head right into it. I'll be spraying the Lalique on my left arm and Masque Milano on my right arm. So given the fact that Masque Milano has a travel sprayer which is much higher quality, and given my experience with the Masque Milano travel sprayers, I'll be spraying pretty much double the quantity of the Lalique compared to the Masque Milano. I don't know what the sprayer is like, but we'll give it a try and assess. I think I'll start off with 3 sprays from the Lalique and take it from there. Okay, so the atomizer is actually way better than I was expecting. It's funny because these cheap samples here are really much better than a lot of expensive samples. The worst samples I've probably tried recently are the Xerjoff samples. They barely spray, they feel extremely cheap. The action of the atomizer is really stiff, and it's just a shame for that house. I can already tell that this fragrance wears very light. I smell a ton of alcohol. This is probably due to the Eau de Toilette concentration. Let's give it a sniff. Yeah, I have to say that it's definitely still not my taste at all. This type of scent is the representation of vetiver that is not really to my liking. It's very dry, very, very bitter, and very mature smelling in a way. But let me try to deconstruct it a little bit more. So I get a lot of vetiver. I get a lot of ashy, earthy vetiver, a lot of that dirty, bitter vetiver. But in the background, I immediately start getting some woods and some greenery. A lot of reviews talk about Encre Noire being the perfect representation of like a rainy forest or maybe like a winter forest. I don't necessarily agree. Obviously, there are many types of forests, but the forests that are around me smell nothing like this. They're a lot more resinous, a lot more piney, a lot more woody and green. This is a very gray type of scent. I was almost about to say that it's black, but it's so light wearing that I would have to elevate it to an ashy gray. It's very masculine. It's very, I would say, intentional smelling. I think it's a good scent right off the bat. It doesn't smell cheap whatsoever. It smells classical. It smells like it has a purpose. It smells like it was well constructed. And I actually think that Encre Noire is not that cheap by design. I think it's just so cheap at discounters and just general retailers. Because if you go on the Lalique site, I think that the retail for this is way higher. Speaking of Lalique, Lalique is a brand that I'm very familiar with, but not due to perfumery. I used to work for a luxury goods type shop that used to carry Lalique and would feature a lot of their products. Nothing in perfume world, but I'm very used to their crystals, their figurines, the little cups, the plates, the glasses. Lalique is first and foremost a crystal making house from France. And they have this very iconic signature look, which is this sort of a satin, very high quality crystal. So when I first started my fragrance journey and I came across Lalique, I was absolutely floored. My first reaction was like, whoa, Lalique actually makes perfumes? I had no idea. Surprisingly, Lalique actually makes bottles for other perfumes. The first that comes to mind is Abanita by Molinard. I think that the bottle was designed by Lalique. I'm not really sure if it's produced by Lalique. I highly doubt it just because it's so expensive. The other one that comes to mind is the limited edition of Black Orchid, I think, that Lalique designed the bottle for the Tom Ford. That iconic ribbed bottle for Black Orchid. What else? The Grey Vetiver. Those kind of bottles I think are designed by Lalique. But other than that, I have never smelled any of their other scents and fragrance, and I don't really know anything about them. Already after about 5 minutes, I would say that a lot of the bitterness from the vetiver has gone. And what is left is a lot of woods, a lot of very balsamic type of herbaceousness. It's almost like anise-like, almost licorice-like, and that is a facet of the vetiver. This stage of the fragrance is definitely something that I like a lot more. I'm just not really drawn to that bitter opening of this fragrance. And I do think that in general, vetiver works better for me if it's a supporting note, if it's something in the background that sort of like elevates a fragrance and gives it a little bit of body. To me, vetiver is a lot like garlic. It really works well to elevate dishes, but on its own, like a pure garlic dish is not necessarily my taste. Another thing I have to say is that this fragrance already appears quite light. Maybe I haven't sprayed enough, maybe I haven't sprayed close enough, and that's a huge topic of conversation actually. But I don't feel much power. I definitely smell it in the air, but it's faint and it's very delicate. I can definitely see how this could be a daily office scent, very elegant, very put together, especially in the later stages of the dry down. I don't really have much more to say about the Lalique right now. I say we go ahead and spray the Masque Milano and see how that fares. All right, so here we go. I think I'm gonna do 2 sprays, given the fact that the Lalique atomizer was actually way better than I thought, and that the Masque Milano atomizers for the travel sprayers are really, really good. Missed one. Let me just try again. Okay, so yes, I remember correctly, the sprayers here are absolutely amazing. These travel sizes from Musk Milano are exceptionally good. They're some of the best travel sizes I've seen, and they might be the best way to experience Masque Milano fragrances if you don't really want to dive into the full bottles just yet. Okay, so the opening is similar in a way because it does feature the same type of vetiver. This is a very bitter, very in-your-face opening. I would say that there's way less woods and there's a lot more of a herbaceous tone. This really doesn't give me an impression of a forest whatsoever. I really don't detect any kind of woodiness. This is a lot more in line of Sultan Vetiver, but it's a little bit more of a perfumey take on that formula. And what I mean about that is that Sultan Vetiver, like most Nichanet fragrances, is it has it really goes towards that special effect kind of feeling. They are almost comical renditions of that fragrance note or that fragrance concept. The Masque Milano are generally a little bit more put together, a lot more elegant, a lot more refined. They might pass as a little bit more boring, but this subtle elegance might give them a longer lasting staying power in your fragrance wardrobe. Yeah, I'm sort of getting a lot of similarities with Sultan Vetiver. It is lighter, it is less dense, but I still get that feeling of walking within this jungle of leaves and kind of like going through it with a machete. Everything is wet. I'm getting soaked from all the water on these leaves. It sort of has this like very tropical type of feeling. I'm not versed enough in vetiver to understand or to recognize which vetiver type is from where and to just tell them apart very easily. To me, they really differentiate between wet and sort of sweet herbaceous and dry, ashy, and woody. Wow, the Lalique is incredibly different now. It's insane how much an A-B comparison can really help you pick things apart. These differences would really not come across in a day-to-day use to me. I don't necessarily think that a non-frag enthusiast would be able to tell them apart, especially in the air and especially worn different days. I think they come across as the same type of vibe, but really going A-B, it's a massive difference. And the woody notes in the Lalique, to me, they really elevate the fragrance to a different type of complexity and level. I actually really liked sort of the licorice anise that's in here. I don't think it's very prominent, but that little bit of herbaceous sweetness really helps just tone the whole thing down and make it more palatable. This definitely goes in another direction. There's a lot of herbaceous mintiness. And yes, licorice is also sort of minty in a way, but this is a lot more green. It's almost that mint that you can crush in your hands, almost like parsley, maybe coriander. It's very fresh, very zingy. It almost has a ginger type tone or even some sort of a lime zest type feeling. I'm not really sure what's in the notes. I can't remember them. I have checked them in the past, but right now everything is a blur. Something I'm not really getting from the Masque Milano is the Hemingway title and reference. I don't really know what they're aiming for with the Hemingway. There's also a swordfish drawn onto the bottle, which kind of makes sense with Hemingway given the sea type thing. But the vetiver, I'm not really sure what they're aiming for. If you have any idea of that, please feel free to enlighten me down in the comments. Okay, I don't really know what to add at this stage. I keep going back and forth, but the fragrances in their opening stages don't really transition much. The Masque Milano is still very bitter, it's still very herbaceous and zingy, while the Lalique is definitely toned down. It has taken a lot of woods in. It has that sweet sort of rooty licorice type of accord that really helps tone everything down and keep it in check. I actually think that at this stage, the vetiver part of this fragrance is very minor. I don't really know what's going to happen in the dry down for these two. I guess we'll just have to find out in a little bit. Okay, we're back. It's been about 2 hours, I think a little bit less, maybe an hour and 50. The fragrances haven't really changed that much, to be honest. They just sort of faded out a little bit and got smoother overall. I would say they're still quite different. The Masque Milano retains some of the bitterness, although again, quite smoother. Funnily enough, that minty zinginess, that ginger type thing, has really toned down and now has a facet of the aniseed, of the licorice. For some reason, I kept smelling my arm and all I could picture was sesame seed. I was getting the idea of those like sesame seed crackers with the caramel on top. So it has that very seedy type smell, very green still, but it has this very subtle sweetness, maybe from something like honey. I'm not really sure what's in there and I really haven't gone back to check. But the fragrance is much smoother than it was before. I think it's quite pleasant. It is very green, so you have to be a fan of greenery in general, otherwise you just won't like this fragrance. There might even be some sort of a tea note, almost like a green tea type of feeling. It might be all a product of the vetiver just drying down. I'm not really sure. All I remember from the notes of this is that there were multiple types of vetiver, similar again to the Sultan vetiver from Nichenet. I would say that compared to the Masque Milano, the Lalique is very, very light. I can barely smell it anymore. Again, maybe I haven't smelled enough. Maybe you have to apply more, given the fact that it's an eau de toilette. But the performance difference is pretty massive between the two. What is left from the Lalique is a lot of woodiness and ashiness. And once again, the fragrance has smoothed out and went down in the tonal range. That licorice note that I was really passionate about in the early stages of this fragrance is pretty much gone, or it has faded into the woods. Now the whole fragrance is very one-dimensional, I would say. You get this very dry, gray type of wood. I don't know why, I think it's maybe like a light brown. It's almost a color of some sort of a charred wood. And I don't know why I keep getting color references for the Lalique. And this doesn't really happen for the Masque Milano. This is a lot more neutral in imagery. But the Lalique really comes across as this gray, kind of light brown wood, almost like to an ashy degree. I think that there's a type of wood that they pass current through to make it more fire resistant. Maybe it's like that kind of color, if you know what I mean, or maybe I just remember badly. But one thing I have to give to this fragrance is that it definitely does not smell cheap. This punches way above its weight. And given the fact that you can get this for like 25 to 30 bucks, I think it's an absolute steal. Yeah, the performance is kind of lackluster, but you can definitely reapply. And given the fact that it's so cheap, you can just spray at your heart's content. I'm sorry if I'm not really being as in-depth as usual with the dry down. It's just very bland. I'm not really excited about these fragrances either way. I do think that they're good. I do think that they're good daily wears, but these are definitely not something that suit my taste. And I would probably never gravitate to wearing these two if I had full bottles. I do recognize the reason why a lot of people choose Encre Noire for their signature scent. This is a very manly scent in a way. It does scream elegance, it does scream matureness, it does scream just being put together. It's not necessarily something that I would see worn by a late teen to young adult. I just don't think that this type of scent profile would feel appealing to them. You have to be exceptionally into fragrances, or maybe you have to be drawn to this by association. Maybe your dad wore something similar, maybe your grandfather. This doesn't even get close to the usual fragrance you find in most top 10 lists these days. As for Masque Milano, I'm still sort of puzzled by why this is called Hemingway. I don't really understand it. And Masque Milano as a house has never really got my attention. The fragrances are kind of boring. They're not really decisive or not really experimental enough. I tried 3 up to now. I tried Tango, I tried Russian Tea, and now Hemingway, and they're all sort of middle of the road. They're not bad, they are refined, they're high quality, but they don't take enough risk for my taste. Tango, for example, was just an average amber, and even the Serge Lutens Ambre Sultan just completely obliterates it. Just quality, power, and overall character. The Russian Tea was weird, yes, it had that leather note that was unusual, but it ultimately was not for me. And this Hemingway is just kind of meh. It's safe. I would say it's a good office scent if you want to wear this on a daily basis. If you want to wear this as a signature scent, this could be great. But yeah, I mean, why would you spend this kind of money if you just want to have something so average? I would totally go for the Lalique in general. And actually in this comparison, and I know I wasn't here to find out which of the two is better, but if I were to decide, Lalique wins hands down, given the fact that it's a fraction of the price, it's a lot more interesting, and it has overall a similar type of vibe. If you have any other recommendations for Masque Milano that you think that I should try out, feel free to put it in the comment. I'll do my best to get a sample. I think that the only other one that I'm really interested in is the Monte Cristo one. That should be quite animalic and challenging. Just to close off on the practicalities, I do think that these two fragrances lean a little bit masculine, given the fact that the heavy vetiver is a little bit ashy, a little bit dirty. I just don't see these on a woman. But if you're a woman and you want to wear them, absolutely, no problem. Seasonal wearability is also incredibly good. I think that you can pull these off all year round, no problem. They sort of wear in the mid to high tonal range. They're quite delicate, they're quite inoffensive. There's nothing really heavy and obnoxious about them. If you like vetiver, if you like that bitter type of manly vetiver, these two are great candidates as daily wear. You can probably also wear these in any kind of situation, day or night, casual to formal. These are just so safe in a way. I do applaud that they appear to have a very strict intent, meaning that they're not just another blue fragrance that's out there and that really doesn't stand out from anything. These two are very recognizable and they're actually quite uncommon based on their scent profile. I really never smelled anyone wearing a vetiver scent like these. I would say that if these sound intriguing to you, forget the Masque Milano, just go with the Lalique. I have not tried the other variants in the other flankers of Encre Noire. I don't know what the intense smells like or the extreme or whatever that's called. I think that this is actually pretty good. Again, the longevity is not that great. I would expect something in the neighborhood of maybe 4 to 5 hours for the Encre Noire, maybe 7 to 8 for the Hemingway. But again, you can always reapply with the Encre Noire and it definitely does not break the bank. I'm a big fan of this format where I pair something cheap, recognizable, and relatable to something a little bit more niche and under the radar. And I think that this type of approach really helps you to compare something that's a little bit more niche and exclusive to something you may have smelled around or you even may have owned. Let me know what you think about this format in the comments, if I should continue this, if I should expand this, or if you want me to go back to a little bit more of a niche approach. I think that's it for this one. I'm sorry I don't sound that excited. These two fragrances don't really excite me. They don't really interest me. They're sort of in that neutral zone, but I do recognize that these are good fragrances. They're well constructed. They're great for daily wear. They're just not for me. I'm not really the user type for these fragrances. That's it. If you like this type of content, if you like my approach to video, feel free to subscribe. It always helps the channel and it's massively appreciated. If you want to interact with me, feel free to leave a comment, suggestion, opinion, or anything else down below. I always reply and I always keep the conversation open. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. Until the next video, many more to come as usual. See ya and cheers.